So I call this meeting to order, City of Franklin Technology Commission, Thursday, December 12th, 2024. Did you do the roll call, Jim?
Yep. Scott Mead is absent, not here. Greg Stroig is absent. Alderman John Pecorelli?
Here.
Dale Webler? Here. Laura Galusha is excused. James Rayberger?
Present.
Jeeves Serrana is not here. Andy Pelkey?
Present.
John Farney is excused. Just Pete Carr is excused. Max McWilliams?
Present.
And I'm here. And we get to say the Pledge of Allegiance.
Right. Rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The second agenda item is the citizen comment period. We have a citizen. Do you have comments?
I'm just inquiring because we got that new water tower going up over here, and we had this one over here.
Mm-hmm.
We had that packed with all the...
I'm sorry, could you, for the record, can you state your name and address?
My name is Brian. Okay, I'm over here in Forest Hill Village, right down
What's
the
your last
block.
name, Brian?
He is in paper ADOL, social security number, or driver's license number, anything like that?
That's okay.
Okay. So my question is, or my comment would be, that new water tower is going up. That's been up there for a while. We got all of the utilities and the T-Mobiles and everything like that putting the repeaters out there. I guess that is the highest water, or the highest elevation in Milwaukee County. So I guess the county, in a sense, dictates to Franklin what they're going to go and put up there, and you pretty much have to say, okay, because we're in the Milwaukee County, so you have no say-so of it. But I was kind of just curious, because I go on the internet, and they got these articles, and I was here about a year or something ago. You may remember me, I don't know. But I was just kind of curious, because some of these articles are talking about, the frequency and the bandwidth of 5G and blah, blah, blah. And yeah, it's good, and it's going to go and be efficient, for a lot of things, and we're going to be able to go and transmit all of this data. But there were some side effects that people were starting to question, and that was from a lot of researchers from all over the world. But you can go and you can call them hokey, because, nobody wants to go and stymie progress, because this is definitely progress. So I guess one thing that I was curious about, and I don't know a lot, I just, like I say, I'm just curious. Some of these repeaters and stuff, you got this tower here, and it probably goes to the Milwaukee County Institution, probably got a repeater there for the House of Correction, I would think.
Actually, they're not using wireless to wireless repeaters.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Those are mostly just antennas and some amplifiers for it, but most of them actually have fiber optic running underground. So if you think of it like a big wireless access point, that it then goes down, let's say I'm T-Mobile, I then bring in my fiber optic cable to the main area, and sometimes they'll co-locate equipment on the inside of wherever they're putting it, and then they'll put their literally the radio way up on top of the structure, and then you literally have a cable running down the structure going over to their equipment, and then it shoots it out via the fiber optic underground.
So that basically, that antenna is the receptacle to distribute the different hardwire fiber optics wherever needed?
You have the fiber optics is almost always, not almost always run underground. Sometimes they'll run it on telephone poles.
Okay, that sounds
But then what's actually up there are different types of antennas. So you may have LTE3, LTE4, and then you'll have Gen 5 up there. And the various antennas that you have, one, it comes from various carriers that are out there. That it's not just one carrier that may be up there. You may have Verizon equipment up there. You may have AT&T equipment up there. You may have T-Mobile equipment up there. Each carrier may have their own equipment up there. You may even have a governmental entity up there, like AT&T FirstNet for first responders, may be up there. and then that then goes down to the fiber optic cables that would be running into that facility.
So when you have a repeater up there and you see the gray box and, you know, from this distance from the ground up, it looks like it might be 5 feet tall. Is it safe to say that what you're looking at is the direction, or is it 360 degrees, which it can go and pick up a signal that's being transmitted, or is
It's very directional.
It's very directional.
It's very directional. That's why if like a water tower, that's a circle. They will put multiple antennas all the way around throughout the circle. So if I'm AT&T up there, I'm not just putting one antenna up there, one radio up there. I'm putting multiple going all the way around the radius of the circumference of the circle.
So when we see the majority of the repeaters facing in this direction, would they be receiving something from that direction or transmitting to that direction?
Most of the time, it's broadcast out only. It'll receive a signal coming from a phone on it that you'll be in range and you'll be hitting one of the antennas up on the area. So most of the time, the data is like 90% send and then 1%, 10% receive for it. So it's sending and receiving the signal at the exact same time. But it's not often that you're going to turn around and see, unless they're checking for signal strength and signal quality, where you'll have one cell tower and another cell tower communicating data bandwidth between each other. Most of that's still done underground on fiber optic cables.
Okay, so if the repeater is here and you see the black box and it faces in this direction, if it is being transmitted there, going down fiber optic into the ground and being distributed to where it went, if you see it facing here in this direction, it must have to receive something then from this direction in order to go and send it through its branches of fiber optic, so it would have to come from that direction?
It's where they put the fiber optic cables underground. There just has to be a receiving point at the cell tower for them to turn around and actually put their equipment in. The radio is, like I said, just like a wireless access point. It's broadcast out. It does receive traffic coming from the cell phones, but tower to tower, beyond adjusting itself for signal strength, they aren't transmitting data over the wireless because that'd be grossly inefficient. That they would be transmitting data from tower to tower through the fiber optic cables, and then it goes out actually to the carrier's office.
Okay, I'm kind of getting it, and I can save this for another meeting in the future. Then, what is the purpose of that new tower going to be?
Eventually, that one is going to be torn down.
Oh, really?
Yep.
When's the estimated time that could be torn down?
Probably in the next 3 to 5 years.
Wow, okay.
It's end of life. That it was built in the early 80s. It has a life expectancy on it. I'm guessing. I don't know. I don't work for the water utility, but they tell me the tower is basically out of life, and they're building a new tower that actually has more capacity in it, which will then give more water pressure and service to greater areas. And that one's eventually slated to be torn down and decommissioned.
Is this one, and will that one be, if this is Milwaukee County, and this is the highest, plateau in the will or do these at this point aid in any aircraft landing or takeoff for Mitchell Field?
No.
Is it strictly that?
I mean, they have lights on it so you don't hit it.
Right, but you know how you can go and land some planes without any visibility, that doesn't have anything to do with that.
Nothing.
That's
That's completely different technology.
Telephone and data.
Yeah, it's telephone and data.
Oh, okay. So,
And sometimes emergency response will sometimes be up there too.
even though we don't pay the cost, these carriers, AT&T, T-Mobile, Verizon, whoever it's going to be, you know what I mean? If it's going to be entertainment stuff that's going to go up there, if it's going to be Elon Musk and his Starlink or something like that, will Starlink utilize?
Starlink satellite.
No.
Starlink's entirely satellite.
Okay, so that wouldn't beam it down and then that wouldn't go and just...
No, they don't use the
bounce off
cellular
and
for it. It's entirely controlled via satellite for Starlink.
Okay, if all of these carriers want to go and put up their repeaters,
They have to get a
and
permit.
they don't, we don't bear any of the costs. That's all on them. do we at least collect any revenue from them?
That's a wonderful, it depends question. The city, no, if we lease it out to a cell phone management company, then we actually might. There's actually a state law on the books that's supposed to promote 5G communication throughout the entire state. That if a cellular carrier wants to turn around and put a 5G tower on the land, we can't, as a city or ordinance, prevent them from going ahead and doing so. We have to allow them to turn around and do it per state law. Now, I'm paraphrasing that quite a bit for it, but basically, if they come up and they want to turn around and put in a cell phone tower, we do get a little bit of revenue from it, but it's really not much.
How much revenue do we get from it?
I don't know.
Okay, and because this is a topic
if
that
you have
nobody else might have brought up.
Excuse me, sir. Can you, citizen comment period is
Sure.
somewhat limited. We have a large
Sure,
agenda,
sure.
so
One last
question
question.
would be great.
Right, okay.
Thank you.
One last question, and then it's all yours, and I'll listen to how you guys conduct yourselves. No offense intended on that either. But if this is a new area, is this something that we should expand on and say, hey, you're scaling an operation that's bringing in tens of millions and billions of dollars through your network, and it was really nice when it was fresh and new, but is this something that we want to get our city attorney involved in to sit there and say, hey, let's up the costs for your utilization of
They
this
can always
prime
look at
location?
updating some of the cost structures and permit fees that would associate with that. I do know, at least as far as the new water tower, no one has dug any fiber optic lines over there, including us, for it. So there is no one at this time right now when the water tower goes up. There's no one right now prepped to turn around and put any equipment on the new water tower.
Okay, I'm done.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is the review and approval of the September meeting minutes. Did we all get a chance to look at them? So do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion.
Do I have a second?
second.
Motion is passed.
Who did the primaries, first and second?
I did the first.
Any second.
I'm on the wrong sheet. Sorry.
I was giving you time. So the next item on the agenda is
Do we have
the,
to vote on that though?
oh, that's right, we do have to vote on it. All those in favor of approving the meeting minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Nobody? Meeting minutes stand approved. So the next item is the 2024 IT projects, a year in review. Jim, you have the floor.
We normally try to do this towards the end of the year, do a little bit of a post-mortem on some of the projects that we've actually accomplished for the entire year. So that being said, it was a big year this year. I counted all the projects. We'd had a total of 17 projects that have been initiated, either completed or are very close to turn around and completing in progress. I'm glad to say that this year, the amount of projects that were actually approved and capitalized by the Common Council actually exceeds the number of ad hoc projects that we encounter throughout the year. Normally, it's twice as many ad hoc as there are planned, and that then sometimes pushes back the actual planned projects. It's been an extremely busy year this year with 17 total projects. The IT department, not including the GIS analysts, literally is two basic engineering people and one help desk person. And the help desk person turned around and it started in July for it. So we were out without help desk for an entire year where I had to turn around and do that for the first half of the year. So when I look back at this and going 17 projects for the staffing level that we have, I feel pretty good about it. And the scale of these is huge. Now, when Peggy Steno left, who was the former director of administration here, she was running with 4 what I call mega huge projects that were gigantic in scope. And I'll say that she didn't exactly do the best job at project management on those. And then she left in January of 2023, and the mayor, Steve Olson, at that time gave me those projects that she was entirely working on. And boy, my life kind of changed after that point. So we did a lot of cleanup work on the project management. Last year, the very first one that we actually had was the video surveillance project, where we put in video surveillance cameras because they were failing at the police department. But then we also turned around and put video surveillance system using the exact same platform over to City Hall and the library. And that was a gargantuan project that actually took up a very good chunk of the year. The next one that I inherited was the fiber optic WAN project, where we put in our own fiber optic WAN cabling through all of our facilities throughout all of Franklin. And that was paid for using CARES money, which means it has to be used now by the end of the year, because that's now the deadline of when you can turn around and actually use the CARES money for it. We got that as part of the COVID money, obviously. And we spent about $1.3 million putting in the fiber optic cabling all the way through the city of Franklin. And that's even sharing ducts with the Waukesha Water Utility down on Ryan Road. And then also sharing the duct work going up 51st Street over to the school system, and then again over on Drexel Avenue. So even without trenching and just using an MOU and sharing duct with somebody who already had it in place, it still was an expensive project. It is not cheap, trenching and putting in fiber for it. So a lot of 2023 was spent on getting the approvals, and getting that started, and then having Turnkey, who was the fiber optic installation vendor for us. They are also the vendor that we turn around and use for the maintenance and the repair. We also do all the Diggers hotline requests for us. They were the ones that actually turn around and put in the fiber optic cabling. And they started that in about August of 2023, and they had the majority of it done before Christmas of last year. So then we kind of like pick up this year in 2024. All right, now we got the cabling. Where do we go from there? The other big one that we had was the Avaya phone system replacement. Peggy was looking at originally doing it as a replacement for just City Hall, and to replace our existing Avaya phone system, which was only 2.5 years old at that time, and putting in yet another Avaya on-premise phone system. The main reason is Avaya, being this big, huge dinosaur, really jacked up their rates on support and maintenance, where we were paying over $45,000 a year just for maintenance and support for the Avaya phone systems that we turned around and had. So she wanted to scale that back to a lesser phone system that had a much lower cost for annual maintenance and supports. We decided, as the IT department and the Technology Commission, that swapping out a dinosaur for another dinosaur just did not make any sense. And instead, we turned around and went voice over IP to the cloud. Decided, the business unit actually did the decision to turn around and go with Ring Central on it, that would provide us not only telephone services. The original project, as written, was phone and only phone. But now we actually have voice over IP telephone services. You got text messaging for it. You got video conferencing in it, and you got audio bridging and voicemail with it, and you can take your phone with you. And it's coming in at a significantly lower cost than what we were turning around and paying for on the Avaya system. So now we also, once it's finally done, start canceling AT&T circuits, the trunk circuits that we have coming into the building, feeding the old phone systems.
That was in 2023 that they jacked up the rates?
2022 is when they jacked up the rates. And then in 2023, we just stopped paying it.
Yeah, 2023.
So as of August of 2023, we just turned around and said, we're not taking your support, and if it goes, then it's going, and if something blows up, it blows up. IT, figure it out of how to put it. So we just said, no, we are not going to pay it anymore at that point. And then the last one, the physical security project, when they did the capital project to fix up City Hall, where they put in all new HVAC in here, and they also did a whole bunch of work on the roof, and they did all the taking down of the wood trim work that was all around the wood and put in a composite material. They put in the new front vestibule. They decided to put $350,000 in for physical security projects. We took 2/3 of that amount of money, and we put it into the video surveillance project, and they took 1/3 of it, and that's supposed to be card access door control for City Hall. It's two master keys that can open up basically almost every single door in all of City Hall. And everyone is given, we don't have individuals, we just have 2 master keys, and everyone is given a master key here. And that's
Not good.
that's how we open all of our doors through the entire thing. And you still use a wrench to turn around and close the external doors at the end of the day for it. So that's the physical security that we have today. Johnson Controls has now taken on a new energy efficiency project for it. They're doing new construction work on it. They're now in charge of this whole physical security portion of it. So I fortunately was able to take one of the 4 mega projects and hand it off over to Johnson Controls. We're still talking about, and I'm giving them input on what needs to be done for it, and they're going to start some of the cabling right now for it, and they're going to be putting in new door access control modules soon for it. But that's now fortunately a Johnson Control managed project. I don't have to worry about it. Out of the capitalized projects for this year that were not the mega projects, we had a VMware replacement and a server upgrade for it. So going from version 6.7 to 8.1. Enterprise printer replacements, where we're putting them in with a new printer that actually has HP Wolf inside of it. So it does have security, hardware security safeguards in it, so people can't put rogue firmware directly on the machine, and we can also lock it down. We're replacing some of our old iPads, the Office 365 migration, and eventually our Exchange migration over to the cloud. We're scheduled both internal and external penetration tests. We just ordered a whole bunch of new laptops. They're going to be coming in within the next 2 weeks, so PC and laptops. Phase 1 migration is going to start in December. Next week, Monday, we're actually ordering the ones for 2025, so we're going to be replacing about 250 computers throughout all the city. And then we have Square 9 documentation management system that is actually being used by just the engineering department. Unplanned projects for this year, we have the Active Directory domain controller upgrade over to Windows 2022. We put in the Market Drive assessment management system for the assessors department. We put in a sound monitoring portal for Rock Ventures. PD, we replaced their site level UPS with a brand new one. Trax is a now cloud-based migration system that is used by the police department for citations. On 8/15, we had our first major ever security incident that required response to, and we installed Lapide to help monitor and audit Active Directory and file servers. And then now I was just informed that we now have a DOJ audit. So I have a CIB audit for the municipal court, and then I have a CJIS audit due. Fortunately, my reporting is not going to be December 31st. They now pushed it out to January 1st on that. Video surveillance projects. Finishing up on it. The project is complete. We moved fully into support and maintenance phase. HBS is the vendor on it, and we've had a lot of problems with it, but we still have some camera issues with them. We are on a maintenance and service contract with them. We spend $8,000 a year turning around HBS to support the video surveillance system basically in 3 offices and the smart balls. We still are having some problems with it, and they've been very slow to remediate these problems. I am looking, it's kind of hard to find it, but I am looking for another company that might be able to support our milestone system, and then eventually taking HBS out of the picture. Some of the problems that we have is they were promising us a deep support a knowledge base for the milestone system, only to find out they have 2 people that basically know it. I think one person maybe doesn't quit, or that he's on projects and he doesn't do any support. So we only have one person that comes out and does the support on our system for it. And if he isn't available, then we just get shoved in the queue, and we have to wait till Barry can then turn around and come back out, which is not what we agreed on.
So do we have any contractual remedy to that?
There is not a penalty for it on it. That the collab guard environment is basically a ticket with an SLA, and they promise to meet the SLA, but there is not a penalty in the contract that if they don't meet their SLA, that they're highly penalized for it. So that is a problem.
Is there an implied penalty? Like we can terminate the contract and go someplace
We
else?
can always terminate the contract and go somewhere else. The problem is who knows milestone
Right, understood.
and where are you going to go
Right.
for it.
Right.
So shitty service is better than no service. Is when it's what's really coming down to at this point. But I'm digging, and there's also questions. All right, we got the camera, but can we turn around and actually change the system? And I know Motorola wants to put their software on Motorola cameras, but could we go to Motorola Vigilon and just say the heck with Milestone, and then just update the back-end servers in the DVR? That's another possibility as well, and have another vendor turn around and deal with that. So
Well, it kind of gets back to what you've talked about before with these vendor failures. You had quite an extensive presentation on it before. And so does somebody need to go over the contracts line by line by line with the sales guys who are promising us the world and say, okay, this is what you said, so what happens if you don't meet it on each item? Because then you get into this situation where you're like,
the way the
well,
contract is written is we will work through it until we actually turn around and meet engagement on it. And at this point, the biggest issue I had is for the last 2 weeks, the video wall over in police dispatch has been up, down, up, down. And it's now been taking 2 hours, and I don't know how many screaming fits, turning around and trying to get someone out there. After 2 weeks, I finally got Barry to come out there to see a video surveillance system that is a core operational function
yes.
of the police department. They can't monitor the sally ports. They cannot monitor the cell bay and the prison in there unless the cameras are actually working. And when the monitors keep powering themselves off and powering themselves on, and then they turn around and power on, none of the cameras are in the places where they're supposed to be positioned on the monitor. That's a big problem.
Right. So do we after the salesperson comes in and whine song, you give their song and dance, right? Do we hand it off to somebody else in administration who then says, okay, let's go over everything you promised Jim, and now let's talk about what happens if you don't deliver? I mean, maybe that's just a thing that has to happen when there's a handshake agreement. That
And
yes,
I can tell you right now,
it doesn't happen right now, but
it doesn't happen
it doesn't need to
because
happen.
Kelly's buried.
Right, but Kelly's also not an attorney, right? So
Yeah, and then giving it to Jesse, and Jesse's buried too.
yeah.
So there we have another big problem too. Is there's more work to go around.
But you're the guy in IT, right? There's not many of you. There's
Yep.
one, and there's only like 2 other people, right? But this is an ongoing problem. I've heard you talk about it before. These vendor failures, and then what's the consequence, and what motivates them to not fail, right? Sales guy comes in, promises you this deep stack of knowledge, you get nothing.
Unless you get in a
So-
court lawsuit and you take it to court, which gets very expensive, or you have it in a contract where there's a penalty. where
Yes,
you're absolutely
penalty.
obligated
Yes,
to turn around and deal with the penalty on it.
right. So
And
that's
there is no incentive for them to turn around and meet their SLA.
So should that be the ask we go to the council with to say, hey, we need something to make sure that these promises that are being made, that we are relying on to run our business, or the city, are actually in fact met without going to court, meaning
Right.
there's something in the contract that spells out. I mean, I just feel like it's preventative problems.
There should be
Preventing problem
standardized
solving.
language that's put in contracts.
And that's not in Jesse's boilerplate either.
Right, correct. Standardized language around contracts that are time and material have one set of usually things, contracts that are off of set, like support, usually have other language. The thing also to note though is if a company's only getting $8,000 a year, it's a penalty levy. So the problem is, you're paying $8,000 a year to a company, but it's critical for you to operate. The impact to you is far greater than what you're paying them. So even if they gave you $8,000 back, your impact's way bigger. So part of this is getting back to the point of you got to find vendors that can execute, right? That can do it, because otherwise the monetary penalty you're going to get, even if you got everything back, isn't accounting for what you're.
But those vendors have insurance. And
But I
so-
also realize too, when they don't have the person to support you, they don't have the person to support you.
Right.
That you try to go in there and you were promised depth of support and talent, and then you find out later you've been lied to, and they don't have that level of support.
Yes.
Or they, another situation is next thing you know, you have the turnstile of people coming in and coming out of the company, and now the people that had the skill set are no longer there anymore.
Right, but that's
What are you going to do with the support? And I can't wait around till Barry the turtle finally decides to turn around and engage.
yeah, but this is the responsibility of the company that's promising making these promises. So there's got to be some accountability. Without accountability, they're going to continue to be a problem for you, and we don't want that problem for you. You've got other things to worry about. You need to say, when I turn this thing over to HBS and they say they're going to do this, this, and this, that you get this, this, and this. I mean, it's just got to happen. And if they can't do it, that's their problem. So we just have to be a little bit more. It's not your job to do it. It's somebody else's job to make sure that these promises are actually delivered. Because otherwise, it's an ongoing list of vendor
At this
failures.
point, it's like where I do is I keep on escalating, and then if it actually gets to a certain point, then it's going to be a CEO to CEO conversation.
Well,
Then I bring in the mayor, I bring in their CEO, and it's like, and what are we going to do to turn around and fix this problem? Because right now your business model is failing. If you remember, when we go back to why do vendors fail, particularly Epic failures, it means they have a failing business model. And if they're promising depth of talent and you don't have that talent, that's a big flaw in your business model.
yes.
It means your business is not operating the way it's supposed to. CEO, you better start fixing this.
Yes, but it just can't keep. We just can't keep dumping it back on you. That's what I'm trying to get to. We
There's
can't.
nowhere else to dump it.
It's dumb to dump it back on you. You've got 17 projects going, and then twice that in unplanned stuff. We don't have the resources for it. So we just have to get another resource that can nail down those details and try to hold those vendors accountable through something that's very straightforward. It's not a negotiation. It is, you promised this, you didn't give us this. Now maybe they say, well, sue us. Right?
In this case, if they aren't going
Gotta
to
be
listen to
something.
me, then the next person they're going to be listening is the chief of police. And then it's going to be the chief of police calling Peter over at Heartland, and then it'll be the chief of police turning around. And the only other thing you can turn around and do is start using the press. And then you start really putting bad press on the company out there and how they're detrimentally impacting.
Yeah, we just need something
But then
that's
that
gonna work
makes
faster.
the city look bad.
Yeah, we need something that's going to work faster, more
I know.
effectively. Right? Yeah.
One would hope that if you escalate it to the CEO, it would start moving it. But right now, moving it to the account manager and the senior managers,
Yeah.
it's barely getting me input.
Yeah, you gotta go more.
All right,
You don't get started. Right.
keep going. But this is the thing I think we can.
Unfortunately, vendor fails.
It's-
You can't go to
you know.
McDonald's and get decent service nowadays.
And I've only been here for a short period of time.
But we have the same discussion every year.
Fiber optic project. Brief rundown on it, on a time scale. So in January, all right, we have the fiber optic cable laid. Turnkey came in and they looked at their patch panel and certified all of their fiber optic cabling and tested it. And they also turned around and ran an extension panel between the data center and the electrical room IDF1. We signed contracts for the fiber optic cable repair with Turnkey for support, location requests, and also for Diggers Hotline. I cannot believe the number of Diggers Hotline requests that we get. When we are spending over $100,000 a year. When I found out we have 2 full-time employees at the water department doing nothing but handling Diggers Hotline requests, and we can't collect a dime on that.
So let me ask a couple questions on that.
Yep.
So one, we did an audit of the requests we get and how many we get that are locates versus locates. So essentially, people can call Diggers Hotline, and I'm gonna be like a construction company or whatever. And I'm gonna call and I'm gonna go work on this. And the Diggers Hotline request, there's rules around it. It's only good for so many days, all that kind of stuff, right? So let's say I'm a construction company. I call it in. I don't care. I don't get charged. I call it in across all of my projects. And then I go work on one week. And then I get to the end of the week and I go, well, I'm going to have to go to this one. And those are going to all be expiring. So I'm going to recall them in again. Those are all relocates.
Right.
That cost everybody on the other end of those, it costs us money every single time those come in. But it's really because the construction companies and the others don't want to plan. It's really down to. They're not supposed to do that, right? And they're supposed to technically, if they repeatedly do that, get kicked out of the system to be able to request. And we've looked at how much.
I know the water department ain't doing because they had a change in management.
All right, so we
And
need.
I know the DPW ain't doing it.
All right, so.
And the engineering, that's a catastrophe.
So-
At this
so we
point,
need
and
an
I
audit.
see just a little sliver of a bigger picture. So when I see it, it's only the Diggers Hotline requests where we actually have put our cable in there.
Yeah.
So we have, all right, if it's within 100 meters of the fiber optic cable, I'll get a ticket for it. And we give this by giving them the GIS on our as bills for it. So I get them, and I see it just through the request or the email. Turnkey handles all of it. So they tell us what the requests are, but I see it already too. And it is sometimes a little where you see the same address coming in, and it's like, all right, I recognize this address. I just saw this 3 weeks ago, and you know darn well that it's the same address, same thing, that they couldn't get the construction crew out there at that time, so now they're turning around and redoing it again. Because there's no penalty within Diggers Hotline for resubmitting it, because they don't charge them at all for the service.
Well, the Diggers Hotline doesn't do that audit itself because it doesn't know if it's real or not. But if we keep seeing that occur, actually back and they can. But you have to identify and have
Yes.
data. To
Why can't Diggers Hotlines charge for the locate for business?
They do. Well, there's state stuff, I think. I don't know.
Well, but if it's being abused, then we go to our state
But
rep and
that's-
say it's being abused.
But you can go to Diggers Hotline first and address it there. Because most likely you're going to find, not everybody, it's like a couple companies
Yes.
that are doing it,
Yes.
and then you can address it that way. That's what my gut tells me. You got a couple companies that do it that way, and you have to identify them. My gut is it won't take very long. Looking at the data, a quick pivot table or something like that, and you're going to find real quick all of our requests are all these like 3 or 4 companies. Then you can go back to Diggers Hotline.
So can we get the data from Diggers Hotline?
It's all in emails.
But
they'll have
a
I get a big
database.
email.
They'll
They
have-
were getting all these, believe it or not,
We should be able to get
facts,
a.
and they're now changing it where they're no longer doing fax anymore, and now finally Water and DPW are turning around and getting these in by actually getting it via email, which is a lot easier to track.
But Turnkey's actually doing the work. So how does Turnkey get it?
That's just
Do they
for
get
us.
it?
Like I said, I'm 10% of 90%.
Okay.
But Diggers Hotline will be
So
able to
they're
do
doing
this.
the rest, like if it's a water line or something. Okay.
Water line, they get tons of stuff for the water and DPW for electrical or stuff going in for the construction.
Diggers Hotline would be able to give us a list of all the locates
Yep.
from last year.
Yep.
Somebody,
Give us a dump.
I could do it, could take that list and figure out how many.
No one's considered this important. It's
Right.
like I'm
Well,
seeing
it's
this
a big
now
price
because
tag.
an IT person's looking at this, and it's like I cannot believe how much I'm spending just in my own budget on Diggers Hotline and Locates. And if I'm spending this much, how much is the water utility turning around and spending?
My gut is you got a couple of vendors that are doing this, and that's where you're driving
So
our costs.
if you can give me the data, I can do the research.
I was gonna
Just
say-
for one calendar year.
Yeah.
Just say we just want it for one calendar year. All the requests that came into the city of Franklin for locate services, regardless of which department it is, and I'll figure out if these are repeats or not, and then we can go back to them and say, hey, you're
They usually have a
big
different
burden on us
They
here.
have different codes on them and stuff like that if they're relocated initial and all.
You could probably just set a rule to like check it every year.
Yeah, to be honest, you should have some sort of process.
And tell the honest truth, like I said, I can do it for the IT department, but I'm
No, it
only
should
getting
be-
a small
You want the
portion of the
holistic
request.
view.
This really needs to be done by
Yeah.
either DPW or engineering or more likely the water utility getting the majority, and they really should be doing this exercise.
Right, but if they give it back to you and say, you're the IT guy, you figure it out, just give it to me and I'll figure it out for you.
I was going to say, it would be relatively easy to write like an automation program if you have the database just to look for it, like as they come in real time to pull it out of the email, add it in, and then if it sees certain ones there so many times, you could
Right.
set some rules on it. Almost automate that, so then it's not even an issue with your care. You have to set the rules for it. If they relocate it 6 times in 2 months, or
So in less than 1 year, we
Yeah.
identified a problem.
Yeah.
That's what we're
Yeah,
what it comes
yeah.
down to. Back to the topic, WISCNet. I kind of find it in Peggy's original project plan, she never actually signed a contract with the ISP that was supposed to provide internet service, so we had to do that. Department of Transportation is doing major work on Ryan Road. It's supposed to be for a 2025 kickoff, but they want a lot of the infrastructure and such changed in 2024. I do know on 76th Street, getting the year, we had to do a minor handhold change where it used to be on Ryan Road and had to be moved over to 76th Street instead. Then we got rid of our, and we also did this for the police department, our coax backup modem, and we put in a fiber spectrum circuit, and that's used for backup in case the fiber optic WAN ever has to go down, that we actually have a backup method of turning around and getting over to the internet. The original project plan never included backup systems for it. In February, we finalized our contract with TPX, and they gave us the finalized routing and architecture using Fortinet equipment. TPX is our managed service provider for our new firewalls. We signed a memorandum of understanding with Franklin School Districts for co-location in their data center. It became very clear that, yep, we're going to have to put some of our own equipment and routers inside the Franklin School District's district building for it, and they, instead of us just putting into their racks, they said, no, you can't go in there, you have to put in your own. We had to sign an MOU for that. And then we installed the Spectrum backup router over at the police department. In March, we then turned around and built the actual cage and IDF over at the Franklin School District building that had locked cabinet with firewalls, router switches, a UPS, and an environmental monitor. We did rack and stack for all the Fortinet equipment that just came in. We connected the new firewalls to both the green and the fiber rings. Red being goes to the internet, green means it's site to site, and then goes over to the ECC. And then we also connected the main uplink over to the WISCNet router, which they provided. April, we did firewall rule porting, and unfortunately it had to be manual. All the automated tools to take a Palo Alto firewall configuration and import it into Fortinet format didn't work. So we literally had to go object by object, line by line, which actually was a good thing, and translate it into a method that the Fortinet firewall would turn around and understand, which means we got another third party, a firewall expert, Jan Hartland, looking at each of the firewall rules and does this make sense? Does this not make sense? Do we keep it in? Do we turn it out? And I think our rule set is probably much better and cleaned up now that we turned around and actually did that manual procedure.
Is that going to be a concern when you eventually have to upgrade things?
No, because it will be in Fortinet at this point, and it will probably Fortinet to Fortinet unless we move to a different manufacturer. But if we move to a manufacturer, there's always that risk that marriage is easy, divorce is messy. If you move to a different manufacturer, next thing you know, is your config file going to turn around and port? Maybe it will, maybe it won't.
Just I'm going to note, since you said it was manual, to do all that in case you ever do decide to switch to someone else.
And then
as a reminder on the
I have a company that runs all the firewalls for me. I'm no longer in that business of playing firewall security engineer anymore. I now have an actual security engineer turning around and doing it, who's much better at it than I would ever be. In May, we did our WAN cutovers. We brought Fire Station 1, 2, 3, DPW and Water, which is our remote offices, onto the new fiber optic WAN. No issues. In June, we then cut over City Hall and the Police Department. July, we did a little bit more refining of our BGP routing in between sites. In August, we actually implemented SD-WAN. We decided not to implement SD-WAN on Go Live just to simplify the routing for it. So once we were sure routing was actually working, then we turned around and added SD-WAN on the Spectrum circuits for it. And then we did failover and failback testing, where we'd actually simulate an actual fiber optic cut at a certain office and did WAN go down, did the routing automatically, turn around and dynamically route its way around the actual failure, and if necessary, did it go over to the Spectrum and fall back to the Spectrum transparently. In October, the Department of Transportation, this was interesting, we share the conduit under Ryan Road. And apparently when the Waukesha Water Utility turned around and installed their conduit, which was about 1.5 years before our project, they never actually issued the permits and got them approved through the DOT. I don't know how that one got missed, but boy, it got missed. And they put in the fiber only at 3 feet. And if it's so that deep down on Ryan Road with all the utilities and conduits and pipes and sewers and such, they literally have to do everything and track it in 3D in there. It's that dense of an area for it that they were forced to turn around and cut their fiber. We had enough slack on ours, and then they had to lower their conduit down to the 10-foot mark for it, because they're going to turn around when Ryan Road comes in. They're going to turn around and strip off the top of the road, but they aren't going to turn around and go all the way down deep into it. They're only going to go down, I think, a maximum of 1.5 feet down on with the new road for it. So if you're below 10 feet, you're going to be perfectly fine under it. But if you're at the 3-foot mark, that's still too high where your conduit may get crushed by the weight of the road above it. November, we installed a new sandboxing module on all the firewalls. This is similar to what we got with Palo Alto Firewall, so a Palo Alto Wildfire. So when a file is received from the internet, it will turn around and try to open up the file. If it's executable, try to execute the file. It'll do that in a sandbox mode just to guarantee that it's not malware or something hostile. And that finished up the fiber optic WAN project. Phone project, January. We started collecting all the information from Avaya and AT&T, looking at our configurations on the old phone systems for the configuration of the setups. We had to get all of our DID and routing tables from thank you, from AT&T. We completed our phone inventory list of all the phones, of who has what, and we actually ordered our licenses and the equipment. So we are leasing the telephones from Ring Central. In February, eventually they're probably they're going to go away within 2 to 3. In February, we ported Fire Station 1, 2, 3, DPW, and Water over to Ring Central, and then we removed their old independent offsite PBXs. In March, we started looking at all the call flows for City Hall. We looked all for the station attendants, the menu systems, the ARUs, and all the call queues that we have for all the departments. We offer training classes for both the library and City Hall. In April, we then ported the library and City Hall over to Ring Central, so they're now over on Voice over IP. We also set up integration with overhead paging between Ring Central and the paging system over at Fire Station 1, 2, 3 in the library. In May, we canceled all of the AT&T analog lines. In September, we actually got a hold of the director of IT from City of West Bend and the Baycom engineer who did their integration, because we need to integrate basically the Cisco, the Ring Central using Cisco ATAs, so Voice over IP, to the Vesta system, which is the call handling system used within police dispatch. And we found the Baycom engineer and the City of West Bend, who actually, about a year before us, successfully turned around and started using Ring Central within their police dispatch center. And working with those two, we got a lot of our technical questions answered for it. So then Baycom then started installing configuring 10 ATA ring down lines and then 2 analog backup lines into Vesta. Then October, November, we started testing and troubleshooting police dispatch for the inbound call lines. And then we're planning on porting over the system. We actually got our AT&T port request. They will now be going over to the new phone system on January 22nd. And then that project will be considered done. VMware was fully completed with no outages or major issues. PDS installed some new ProLiant hardware servers for us that replaced the original servers that we ordered back in 2016. The biggest reason why I had someone to do it is they needed to connect it to the 3-par SAN. I don't know Fibre Channel like the back of my hand. And trying to figure it out and then do the readdressing with worldwide names on it, it's like, not my cup of tea. So I turned around and was able to find someone who was able to turn around and do a direct connect, one server to one server, and connect it to the 3-par SAN without bringing everything down. And they did a fantastic job on that. We migrated VMware environment from 6.7 to 8.1. Too bad Dale isn't here because he would like to hear this. We originally anticipated that we were going to need $24,000 to go up for our licenses. We were previously paying $4,600, and once we actually finalized the contracts and such, it wasn't as bad as we thought. So we went from $4,600 down to $7,160. So it wasn't the $24K that we thought that it was going to turn around and escalate to. It was much less than what it actually was. And we renewed all our licenses for the year.
So did that go from perpetual to subscription now? So what's part of that?
They changed their portfolio of licenses.
Okay.
So now it's like when you buy it, you're now buying a package. You get one of 2 packages of software products that you have to turn around and buy.
Okay.
We're in the process right now of replacing additional printers. We did 5 already, Fire Station 1, 2, and 3. In December, James Imaging will be deploying 7 new printers as managed printers, and we are connecting these over to HP Security Manager for it. What this does is it pushes out a central configuration, so I can guarantee that the printer setup for each and every single printer is 100% exactly the same, and it all locks it down for each and every single printer. Penetration test was done in September for our external system. The only issue that they turned around that we knew about was our Exchange 2010 server. Beyond that, that was the only major issue that we had. And then we decided to postpone the internal penetration test until all the new planned computer equipment is on the network. It makes no sense to go do an internal penetration test when you're going to be replacing 250 computers. They're pretty much invalidated immediately. Then we're implementing Square 9 Global Search, which is their document management system, just in the engineering department. So in October, they spun up the application in the main database. Engineering is actually finalizing the taxonomy and the document types. And I'm actually having the Franklin Public Library look at how we're going to categorize documents and document types and subjects. So you have classes, subclasses for each one of that. And I want to make sure, because they're tagging their documents in engineering right now using a tagging method that they set up 30 years ago. And I'm not quite sure that's exactly going to be extensible and exactly the way we would want it for a DMS for it. And Debbie is moving on and retiring in January. It'll be Christy that's taking this over. So I want to make sure we don't do the big thing that most municipalities do, is they take all the data from a file server, dump it into one big pile in a database, and they don't tag it correctly and then have problems turning around and finding it. So I want to make sure we can find the data that we're actually putting in there. And who better to look at how you categorize things in the library. Mm-hmm. And then we're doing large file blueprints. They took that off in 2 batches to be imported, and they're about 2/3 of the way done scanning all of the large blueprints for it, and that's now all going to be electronic. We're doing iPad replacements, so anything that's a generation 6, 7, or 8 is now being moved over to a version 10 iPad just to make sure that it stays on Apple's replacement schedule, and it'll get the latest security patches. The 6s are soon going to be rolled completely off of support. And then, as we said, the PC laptop replacements are coming. We tried to order all of the equipment as close as we can to one batch, so we got the greatest amount of discount. Yay! And then we had to make sure that anything that was for the 2025 capital budget will be billed and arrived in January. We are moving away from HP as our standard PC and laptop, and we're going over to Lenovo. We're getting better discounts from Lenovo. We are able to use AMD processors instead of Intel's. And we're also getting direct access to not only a dedicated account manager, but a dedicated support team in there as well, so I don't have to go through the help desk. One of the biggest problems HP is doing is they're putting a chat bot in front of everything. So you're not even talking to a human. You have to get through the chat bot, including their enterprise customers. You have to get through the chat bot before you're allowed to turn around and talk to a human. And that can't be done.
Every company is doing that. Every company is just cutting. They're just looking. The next place to fatten the bottom line is to cut support.
That's it. That's it.
So they realize that lost the sale to be.
I always would say it's a pendulum. They swing one too far that way.
And they got back out.
Just
Max has been absolutely fantastic in helping me with the Office 365 migration. This was planned for basically 3 years now, but it really took top priority after the August security incident because we didn't have two-factor authentication. It's like, we need to implement two-factor authentication like now, and then having that tied to Office 365. So the plan was actually originally to bring in Office 365 with, I keep on calling it Entra. It's Entra. Entra, but I learned it from the Canadians.
Not Azure AD.
French Canadian. Entrez-vous, s'il vous plaît.
No. Azure AD, it's okay.
Entra will be forever before I stop saying it with a French accent.
Yeah, they'll rebrand it again.
So that was supposed to be live with YubiKeys 2FA tokens in October. Unfortunately, we ran into a big problem because we are not spinning it up with a commercial E3 tenant. We're going with a government-only tenant, which is a lot harder and a lot more bureaucratic, and you have a lot more hoops that you have to jump through on it. That took us now to November before they were actually able to turn around and spin it up with a tenant. We are having a problem where our internal domain name is ci.franklin.wi.us, and our external domain name is franklinwi.gov. They want it now to be the same. And we're going to run into this again with cloud provider after cloud provider after cloud provider, where our internal Active Directory UPN and DNS name on the inside is not what the outside is. Now, we did have a hard stop on this, where they wanted us to turn around and modify our UPN prefix in Active Directory in order to turn around and allow us to synchronize to the cloud. You try running the synchronization software, it goes up between, and you didn't synchronize the thing for it. So you're stuck on it. Well, after working this week with Microsoft support on it, they actually have some transforms within the synchronization program, which are, shall we say, lightly documented. But they say, yes, other people are doing it, and it works, where we will translate that internal domain name over to the external domain name. I think eventually down the road we're going to have to convert our Active Directory domain name and our DNS, and it's going to be a mess to do it. We're probably going to have to put in a new forest, a new domain name. It's going to be franklinwi.gov, and we're just going to have to turn around and rebuild our accounts, our groups, our computer accounts, and migrate our application servers one by one by one by one and put it into the directory. Or otherwise, we're going to continue to have this problem again after again with cloud service providers. Microsoft has a way of getting around it, but will the next cloud provider? I think that's kind of where we're looking at it down the road. This was an acceptable way back in 2000 of designing your naming architecture, but now with the cloud, it works great for on-premise, but it doesn't work for the cloud. I think we're going to be forced to turn around and do that.
Well, if you tie your single sign-on back into your and you have that corrected there, then you shouldn't get into that. providers because they're not going to see
If they use
our
Entra
internal-
or Entra.
It's,
Yeah.
They
yeah,
use
as long as they're
Entra.
talking to the cloud, Azure AD in the cloud, or Entra, that's.
So I'm hoping that's not going to be a problem in the future, but I'm going to put it on a long-term planning just where we might run into this, or we just say we're not going to do any Active Directory on-prem, and all Active Directory is going to be with Entra, and that would be it.
That's what I've seen most organizations do, but they might still keep a very small presence on-prem. But most people are now just doing entirely all their authentication through the cloud because they're completely getting rid of their on-prem data centers, they're getting rid of everything, and they're just pushing everything to the cloud.
And I think our biggest one, ProPhoenix, which is the system used over at the police department, the records management system and the computer-aided dispatch, the vendor itself is now offering ProPhoenix Online, where they're now hosting this as a shared service for it. I think the reality is eventually some of these core applications over at the police department are just going to turn around and go to a cloud, whether it be a shared government cloud or the Microsoft cloud and we shove it up in Azure, or a private cloud where it's ProPhoenix, the application vendor. Eventually all of this is going to go to the cloud, and we just are not going to have application servers on site anymore. Probably the way this is going to
Long-term, absolutely.
long-term go.
And you're already seeing other vendors too. So there's the company that makes all the police cams. They host it, but
Yeah,
it's
Motorola.
it's Axos, the one who does
Yeah.
the software behind it. It's all hosted on Azure. I know.
Yep.
But it doesn't say that anywhere when you go and use them. It's just that's what the company's doing, and you can find that they'll be.
And I was just
AWS,
announced in
GCP.
2025 we're getting body cameras.
So that's the way everyone's going because no one wants to manage their own. Even these other big companies, they don't want to manage.
Right. So it'll be just minor stuff like the video surveillance footage and such that you're going to have on site. Probably where we're going to be seeing this. There was a delay with the Microsoft tenant. I found out that Heartland actually, when they were troubleshooting a problem for us way back in 2020 with the pandemic, they actually created a tenant for us without any authorization from the people at Franklin. They spun up a new tenant and they used our domain, registered it with on Microsoft.com. And when we tried to bring up the new government G3 tenant, next thing we know, there's another tenant out there already with our name on it. And that caused a lot of problems and delays for it. So they finally found it through support and was able to get rid of the invalid tenant. But that also delayed us turning around and using YubiKeys and rolling that out for 2FA authentication. So that's coming down the road. And then we're looking at the migration of email from 2020 Exchange to the server cloud. That's also been significantly delayed by about 2 to 3 months. Unfortunately, we're paying Microsoft licensing fees right now to tune to $8,000, and no one's using it at this point. So our goal is to turn around and get on Entra as quickly as we possibly can, because we are paying the licensing fees for it.
Is there a training plan for the end users when it comes to the new?
Interesting, I was just turning around and talking to Kelly about that today. Particularly with Windows 11, and we're going to have to find money for it, but there might be some spare money because I'm in the black with the IT budget right now. There is a company that will give us a customized on-site training for Windows 11. And what I want to do, instead of just having a Windows 11 class, like if I send them to New Horizons or something like that, the morning is talking about Windows 11 and the user interface, and the afternoon's all spent about this is how you configure it, this is how you install it, this is how you put an antivirus on it, and the end users don't care. Unless they're doing it at home, they don't care about that. That's IT that has to care about that. So what I want them to do is in the morning, we turn around and talk about Windows 11, because I'm now giving everyone a brand new operating system, good if they know how to use it. And then the afternoon, we actually talk about Microsoft Office and Office 365, and what we're now turning around and doing in the cloud, and how some of their main Office applications have changed. So I'm hopefully going to get a customized training program together for that, and then send all the people for one-day classes on that.
Let me do some looking. We used to offer a lot of really free training.
Yeah, lots of video training too.
Well, no, like live instructor-led training. So during COVID, Microsoft had retail stores They all closed.
The big problem that we have is you got a person, even if they do a lot of video training and it's done in a virtual environment, unless I get them out of this building and put them somewhere else, no one's going to leave them alone. Even at like a Christmas party, the clerks complain they can never really turn around and join the Christmas party because someone always has to be up there to monitor the counter and take all the phone calls for it and deal with the people. And that's true. So someone has to mind the store while someone's over in training. And the best thing to do is just get them the heck out of here for one day so they can do this uninterrupted and get the best education. Even if we did it virtually for that, but it's like they have to be left alone in order to. We do have a highly interrupt-based environment at City Hall. Domain controllers, we upgraded all of our domain controllers over to Windows 2022. Some of this was in preparation for Office 365. Some of it was also furthering hardening our domain controller environment post the August. Market Drive was installed for the assessor. This was done in April. And the big problem was trying to get all the data files from Accurate Assessor, which was just a catastrophe and a mess. The data files were not in good shape, and you had to try to move them into Market Drive. Currently, the application, and I'm not happy about this, is running in Green Bay over at Forward Appraisal. One of the outstanding tasks on this is to turn around and take that application and database, and we kind of left it there for the simple fact that they had so much to do with correcting the assessments and changing the assessment role that they needed direct access to it. So eventually we'll be moving that application over to City Hall as an app and then backing it up on our central SQL servers. 2024, unplanned projects. Rock, what can I say anymore? In June, the Rock Ventures purchased the Larson Davis Cloud Portal subscriptions. So we actually now have a sound monitoring web portal instead of a desktop portal for this. They really waited before they turned around and purchased the licensing before opening day, before Tacos and Tequila. So the implementation for it was really, really, really rushed. But we did get it eventually up and online, and all the sound portals were on it. The monitoring portal connects to the sound monitor and receives data as it's available to internal personnel, and makes a light version of the portal available via our Franklin website. Notice it's real-time only, it's not historical. Only the City of Franklin and Rock people have access to the historical information. There were some initial problems at launch where the old desktop monitoring app would suddenly interrupt the data collection that was going to the cloud, and this caused gaps in the data collection. Larson Davis worked about 3 weeks on figuring this out and figuring out how we can guarantee that if someone does open up the desktop application, it's not going to crush the collection online from the sound monitor. So they finally got that fixed. The sound monitoring portal is now completely stable. We've been monitoring it in IT for the data, and we aren't getting any gaps in the historical collection or analysis, despite of what some people may say. How am I ahead? In March, we put a whole brand new site UPS and a power transfer switch within the PD. They, unlike a lot of the places, they actually have one UPS for their entire building that actually powers their entire building before the generator actually turns around and kicks in. In order to do this, you had to take everything down in the entire PD, and I mean everything. And that was basically the first time since 2000 that the power was completely cut off to the entire police department. And then you're praying as you're watching everything coming up from the microwave over to the SAN, making sure that everything actually comes up and turns power. And it came up without any problems for it. SAN OS and firmware upgrade. In September, we upgraded the firmware on the 3-par SAN. HP no longer supports this under their warranty contract, which just spent a fortune for it. I had to jump through a whole bunch of hoops trying to get HP to turn around and do a custom support contract to actually update the firmware and support. This does go permanently out of support in May of 2026. they will no longer support the 3 parsec. There were some issues that we had with hardware over at the police department where it failed. They had to replace a controller on one of the disk shelves for it, and because it was on an older version of firmware and OS on it, there were some problems getting replacement hardware to work, so therefore that was an incentive to turn around and upgrade to the latest versions. Trax is the citation software that we use for giving people traffic tickets over at the police department. In April, the on-premise system that was put in 2015 was formally upgraded. It's now a new cloud-based application that is run by the State of Wisconsin Department of Transportation. We had to move all of our historical data, and then each department, or each PSAP, has its own templates for how you want your tickets to turn around and look, so all those ticketing templates also needed to be upgraded. On 8/15, we had our wonderful security incident. In September, we installed Lapide Active Directory and file server monitoring to audit all the changes being done to Active Directory and the file server, which is really going to help us with the NIST and the CJIS requirements. This dramatically increased file server auditing because we did have a data exfiltration as part of the security incident. We did have a problem with a former employee, the director of engineering, deleting necessary files down in the engineering department. Auditing wasn't fully turned on as the way I thought it was, and we couldn't prove that he actually did the deletion, even though that did go over to the police department as a criminal investigation for it. We can't prove it, but if anyone does this ever again, Lapide is in place, and we will see it. And auditing rules has been increased on it as well. That date, for the security incident, all the data security forensics was performed by Surefire and Rapid7. So those 2 companies let us know exactly what happened, how it happened, and what exactly did happen when we had the security incident. Right now, Haystack is actually working on the data exfiltration. So they're going through we gave them 1.6 terabytes of information. Based upon the command that was actually issued, they're able to turn around and look at 565 gigs that were in scope to what was actually being exfiltrated. And they're now looking through each and every single one of the documents for PII, SPII, HIPAA, or any form of account information or credit card information that might actually be in the file. Because none of it's tagged on a file server of what it is. So the only way to know if sensitive personal information was released is to go through that data. This is being paid for by our cyber insurance company at this point in time. And they will then give us the list of the companies that were impacted by it or potentially impacted by it, and those are the ones we actually have to give notification to, instead of notification to everybody. Last but not least, Department of Justice CJIS audits. We were audited last time on the on-site on the 5.9 regulations. What one little bit of a number means, 0.5, is the new one on it. The regulations grew by 300%, and it's now 71 pages of guidelines. It's now 246. We have 5 new sections. This all aligns to the NIST framework on it. So we now have SA, SI, MAPL, CP, and RM, now all part of the CJIS framework. It should be noted, this now has absolutely nothing to do with protecting CJIS data and guarantee that any arrests or warrant information that they collect from the FBI or the DOJ is being maintained and handled correctly by the PII, as PII and CJIS information. Now it's basically the DOJ telling us how to run our data center environments. So they are taking a federal framework and applying it directly through CJIS to a local municipality for it. Now, fortunately, we're well on the hand of actually implementing the CJIS framework voluntarily and writing our security policies. Guess what I was doing during Thanksgiving? And writing all these beasts of documents for it that then ties directly over to this. But this is a massive increase in regulation. Massive at this point in time.
Is it good regulation, or is it just, do they know what they're doing? Or is this...
In some cases, you have to turn around and look. Like when we look at physical security policy, one of the elements is fire suppression. And do you have an automated fire suppression system in your data center? No. I'm not running 400 servers in my data center. I've got one rack. And if something caught on fire over there, I'd use the fire extinguisher or hit the circuit breaker. I'm not that dumb. And we don't have the ability or the money to put on a Halon or whatever it is today, gas system in there to do fire suppression. Does fire suppression have anything to do with protecting CJIS data? No. Is it a good idea to have one in there if you're going to be running a data center? Yes. But again, you're using the CJIS framework to tell somebody how to run their operations. And that, unfortunately, is what the DOJ is doing.
And this is where you see a lot of organizations that want to get out of the data center. They're
Got
getting
it.
in there and make it someone else's problem.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Microsoft, Google, whoever.
Amen to it.
Because they're already doing it all the time. So.
Yeah, exactly. And then also it helps you with your staffing talents. You're not spending time physically going racking.
Exactly. But as it stands right now, I have, out of the 16 documents, I'm still working on the BCP because it's such a beast. Out of the 16 NIST documents, I have written, let's still proof them, but I have written 15 out of the 16. We're almost, if you remember the strategic technology plan, that was a 2-year project. Turn around and do it. Because of this, it's like suddenly I put the pedal to the metal and just spent 2 weeks and every available bit of time that I had, both during hours and after hours, just getting this done and getting this written for it. Because I knew I was going to need it for it. Whether it's approved or not is another story. Because now once we turn around and approve these documents, it then goes over to the Common Council, because the Common Council has to approve all policy. I'm going to have to read
How much is it going to cost?
15 or 16 of these documents.
How much?
I get to read them twice.
How much expense is it going to be, though? Right? I mean, you really have to have a automated fire suppression system, and for our 3 racks.
And when I'm writing this too, I'm also writing it on what we're going to do. I have the CJIS that says, you need to have an automated security, and I'm saying, this is what our fire suppression system is. And then I have my side list of here, all right, this is all the stuff, the way I should run my environment. It isn't telling me, am I running it this way today? I have all my list of things, and this is what I have to do to transform my environment to be in compliance with this. And it's a pretty good list, but it actually isn't that bad. I was pleasantly surprised to see just how achievable it actually was to aligning some of this. Getting rid of shared accounts always seems to be the worst one off of it. But beyond that, I mean, we're really not that far off on some of the regulations. And at that point, when they turn around, you can't have anyone turn around and use USB flash drive because the DOJ says. And then we'll turn around and say, but we need this on a daily basis, and we're not going to turn around and do that. And you can knock us down on the CJIS audit for it, but honestly, what are you going to do to us? Shut us down and remove our access to the CJIS data?
I don't think they'll knock it down. Usually they'll say this.
There's supposed
this
to
is
be
the
a recommendation.
This
It's
is the
supposed to be now, thou shalt do it or die.
This is the requirement, this is the recommendation, and this is how we've interpreted it. You know. And if that's not good, then you have to tell us what makes it better.
Now, I've seen what the regulation is.
Mm-hmm.
I have yet to get the questionnaire yet from Cindy over at PD Dispatch, who's in charge of the CJIS audit. So she has work on sections 1 through 4. I get the glorious section 5, which is the largest section of the whole doggone thing. So I have yet to see the questionnaire on it. So once I see the questionnaire off of it and then start answering, then I'll know just how well we are doing with the actual audit.
Is the audit going on now?
And it's not an on-site audit.
Okay.
It's fill a questionnaire out, fill out a spreadsheet, and then turn around, give it to the auditor. The auditor looks at it, maybe asks some more additional questions on it, and then tells you, areas where you are out of compliance and need to work on, and what is your plan to get into compliance? For example, I don't know if it's in the regulations, but I know it's in the NIST handbook, is when the lights go out in your data center, do you have an emergency lighting system? No, I don't. Why? Because we're on a generator. That if the light goes out, the generator kicks in 5 seconds. If the lights go out, I just wait 5 seconds and the light's going to come back on again. I've never been here 8 years now, and the lights not come on in the data center. So my emergency lighting system is literally going to be a battery-operated lantern that I'm just going to mount on the wall. There's my emergency lighting. So there are going to be minor things, silly things like that, where we're going to turn around and deal with some of the radiation.
Mm-hmm. You got to remember, these are written because there are some people that are not building data centers with that quality or with that in mind, that don't have a backup generator, and they're putting their organizations.
But also, this is a federal framework that's being applied to a municipality. They have 3 million employees in IT. I have 3. So to say this scope applies to this scope is wildly out to lunch. Now, we are voluntarily doing it, but we're going to do it at a scope level that is appropriate for a municipality.
But then just wait for the regulations to come through. When they start to break it out, then they'll be like, oh, if you're a government of this size, this is what your rules are. Then this size.
I cannot wait till version 6 comes out.
Then you have to read all the versions.
Okay. And then what the heck they turn around and come up with. At least I saw this one coming. At least when we applied NIST as our main framework, we as a group had the intelligence to see this day coming, and now the day is here.
Which is good. That puts us
right on to the next item. How do we want to handle this?
Actually, before we go to the next item, I missed an item early on, and that was to welcome our new member, James McWilliams.
Hello.
Welcome, James. So now,
What do we know about James? I don't know anything about James.
well,
But can you tell us about yourself, James?
So I actually go by my middle name, Max, which is what you see here. My first birthday cake said "Happy Birthday, Max," so I had no decision in that matter. I've been James Maxwell sounds better than Maxwell James. That's the story, and they're sticking to it. But I've been a resident of Franklin for a little over 5 years now. But in my IT career, I've been at Microsoft, so to speak, for the last 10 years, working in the services division, managing enterprise services agreements. More recently, I am now on the business strategy side for data governance. I know a lot about that. So,
Okay.
I also have an MBA from the University of Chicago, and I went to the University of Illinois.
All right. Great.
great asset. Welcome aboard.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Welcome. Already tapped into it.
All right. So the next 2 items on the agenda are the NIST security policies. Jim, how do you want to handle that?
Well, we could turn around and say, because there's only 4 of us here tonight, it would be inappropriate to turn around and pass these and pass the buck till January, and we can get out of here. That would be option number 1.
Yeah.
Option number 2 would be say, yep, I've already reviewed this at home. Here's the areas that I may have an issue with, and we will talk about only the areas that we have an issue with, and make a recommendation on some of those sections, and then do a vote to recommend the actual policy document. Or we could do like we've done before, where Jim plays hog caller, and I just read this paragraph by paragraph, very, very fast.
We don't want you to have.
I know we don't want that option.
Do the other people who are not here know them better than I do? They have, expertise in areas covered in here that we'd want to have their input.
Yeah.
I think everyone has done with media protection in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
Be it your USB hard drives or flash drives or your backup tapes. I think everyone at some point in time has had experience with that. And the physical, environmental, and security, I think everyone's had to deal with card access control and physical access to the building and visitor logs and all that sort of stuff, whether they do it as an employee or a person who's actually in charge of the area.
So I think your first option is probably the best one, and let's defer this to get more input
Yeah.
and comments from the rest of the commission. Do we need to vote on that?
No, well, I can just say motion to, on both of these, just a motion to defer till January.
Oh, do I have a motion to defer?
Yes.
I'll second.
Seconded? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes
And I
have
will
it.
assume that's for both.
Yes, that is for both of them. Yeah, because I would think Greg would want to certainly comment on these, and same with Scott. All right.
Okay, that takes us to the directors.
Technical issues review is what's next.
Okay. Now I get to play auctioneer again. The City of Franklin Police Department is working on a project that will use Motorola body cameras, if they decide to go down that route, in 2025. Since it has long been known that the PD IT infrastructure will be severely strained by the daily operations and storage of body camera video evidence, the technology implementation has been designed to be delayed until it is required. As the result of the Wisconsin DA's office increased use of video evidence and testimony during case prosecution, Franklin will be soon installing body camera surveillance systems. Although a preliminary study is still ongoing, it is likely that the video footage will be stored in a government-only off-premise cloud. Because of the quantity of the body cameras and the amount of footage that must be gathered, having the data kept on-site and backed up by local computers is prohibitively expensive. In addition to data moving inbound and outbound to the internet, it is acknowledged that the deployment of this technology will significantly alter the information flows, resulting in a sharp rise in the use of LAN wired and wireless networks. Cloud-based camera applications and storages are made available over the new fiber optic ring and the WISCnet connection. The 2025 desktop and laptop standards have been modified by the City of Franklin. The city will switch from the HP platform, which uses HP Wolf for hardware security services, to the Lenovo ThinkPad and ThinkCenter machines, which use ThinkShield technology. The standard operating system for the new computers will be Windows 11 24H2, which necessitates that the device has a TPM 2.0 chip on the motherboard. Additionally, the Lenovo devices come with a security management controller chip that ensures the integrity of the device firmware, digitally signed drivers, verified and backed up UEFI BIOS, and hardware biometric equipment such as fingerprint readers. The ThinkShield platform is extensible and being integrated with third-party services such as Intel vPro for asset management and remote device wipes, or SentinelOne for ATM client integration with the hardware. Lenovo also has a supply chain assurance program, being Chinese, that's good, that requires vendor verifiable software, hardware, and security certification. A senior technical support engineer and dedicated Lenovo account manager will be available to the city, enabling the prompt escalation of complex technical support issues to an inside contact instead of going through the help desk. Opal hardware encrypted drives will be standard on all newly ordered devices. They threw that in there, which made it really nice. And then director's notes on operations. On January 22nd, 2025, the Franklin Police Department is scheduled to convert from their local Avaya PBX to Rankin Central. This is the very last office on the legacy Avaya phone system. Post the conversion, all AT&T FlexReach lines will be decommissioned. As expected, the conversion of the police department has the most complex setup and routing of all the offices. Ring Central is required not only to provide 10 ring-down lines to the Franklin Police Department, but also integrate with the PD Vesta call control system. The City of West Bend has been very helpful in assisting Franklin with the conversion, as they successfully integrated Ring Central and Vesta back in 2023. The same Baycom engineer that performed the West Bend conversion will be assisting the Franklin migration. This will be the 8th PBX to be converted. Next issue. In February 2025, the Franklin Police Department will transition to a new E911 system. The Department of Emergency Management in Milwaukee County is in charge of the coordination of the rollout of AT&T ESINet, which is being distributed to all municipalities in the county. AT&T, the 911 carrier, will be installing 2 new fiber circuits and routers to the new system. ESINet will then be integrated into Vesta by Baycom. Franklin is one of the few municipalities in Milwaukee County that directly receives all 911 calls directly into PD dispatch. Unless Franklin Police Department is totally down, Milwaukee County does not respond to any of the Franklin 911 calls. The current version of ProPhoenix 2022 will be deprecated by February 2025 since it no longer is covered by the support agreement. Franklin Police Department is planning an in-place update to ProPhoenix 2024 R2. IT does not expect the installation to involve any extra adjustments to firewall or service settings. There aren't many PSAPs using this current version of CAD at the moment. The anticipated migration may have an effect on the Milwaukee County telesystem. The operating system would be upgraded from Windows Server 2016 to 2022 by the Police Department. It is anticipated that the faster monthly security patching will be facilitated by the latest OS version. Pending the successful rollout of AD synchronization of Microsoft Entra ID, the city is planning a full migration to Exchange 2010 over to the Microsoft Cloud. The project is expected to launch sometime in February or March of 2025. All emails, archiving, journaling for open records requests, and backups will be entirely cloud-based. Employees will access Office 365 with Exchange in the cloud using YubiKey's 2FA hardware tokens. Moving Exchange entirely to the cloud will eliminate the only external security risks as identified by penetration testing. Web-based mobility management portal will completely be hosted in the Microsoft Cloud. This is the project that has been in the slow planning stages for the past 4 years. And that is it.
That's a lot. So, we'll continue. The next item on the list here is the future agenda items. We show here the IT security project run by Johnson Controls and the failure avoidance and mitigation activities. I think we need to add the review of the 2 NIST policies to this. And any other items that those present would like to add?
Do you already have a policy to end of life for all of your, or the end of for products that SQL Server 2012 is going out of support this year? You know, like, do we have any, or do you have a master list of all the life?
We don't have that. I don't have a master list for the simple fact that we don't have that much.
That's what I mean. You have a process in place
Yes.
to at least know what's
Yes.
coming up for that year.
Definitely on the Microsoft side, I absolutely know.
I
We
meant
do
for
have some
everyone,
stuff
not just
that we're
Microsoft.
kind of like stuck with, like Exchange. That's on 2008 until we actually get rid of it. Windows 2008 with Exchange 2010 on it. So we do have a couple legacy systems that are on it. But I actually have that as a project right now of any program that is more than one full version behind. If it's 2 versions behind, then it has to turn around and be upgraded. Like just for support and maintenance, I don't like staying on software that is 2 cycles behind on the support version.
Also, anything that's mission critical is probably in our risk register.
Correct.
Okay, I just asking because I don't know.
So, but piggybacking off on that, then is you're talking about it earlier with cloud, right? Is what we have a that's just part, but we have a roadmap on what's coming up, what's the next stuff we have to touch, and
I do
like
not
the
have a full
decision-making on
cloud
that.
migration plan at this point. For the simple fact is going back to the strategic technology plan, our first thing is putting out the plans, the first NIST documents, and then there's also a whole series of different plans, infrastructure plans, application plans, etc. Those have not been fleshed out yet. So as I'm fleshing those plans out, cloud migration strategy will be going into those actual plans.
Can we add that as a future agenda item? I know that'll be out in the from that talking about.
We want to get it on a list.
Correct. Yeah.
So we have visibility.
Public cloud migration strategy.
Thank you. All right, is there any other business we would like to discuss as a commission? Okay, I guess we're good. Next meeting date is January 22nd, 2025. Put that on your calendars. And then I need a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second, anybody?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Guys have it. Meeting is closed.